as most of you know, I am the youngest of 4 kids, and my 3 older siblings over the years have kind of warned me, saying, John, when you get into your mid to late 40s, everything's going to change and not for the better. And unfortunately, they've been kind of right. Like, my vision isn't what it used to be. I don't recover as quickly from a long run as I used to. And I've noticed my memory, which used to be really sharp, isn't as sharp as it once was. And it reminded me this week of a Man on the Street video I saw that a late night talk show host had posted, where they approached dads and put them on the spot and just asked them if they could recall certain little details, important details about their kids' lives. Man, this thing's classic. Take a look at this.
Do you consider you guys pretty close?
Yeah.
What is your daughter's favorite subject in school?
Social study.
Is that true?
No.
What grade is your daughter going into?
9th grade.
What's the name of your daughter's school?
Ash Creek Elementary School.
No.
River Creek.
No.
Something Creek.
No.
What color are your daughter's eyes?
Brown.
All right, let's look. That is incorrect.
They're blue. I have a brown-eyed daughter, though.
What is your daughter's birthday?
May 17th. Oh, no, it's the 14th, and I don't know what year.
Can you name your daughter's teacher?
Mrs. Jones.
Nope.
Mrs. Moore. Is not Moore?
Nope. That was my elementary school teacher.
Can you name their teachers?
Of course I cannot.
What are your daughter's birthdays?
Why do you do this to me?
What about her?
I give up.
Any guesses?
Yesterday.
Oh yeah, yesterday! Horrible.
Her birthday was yesterday, and you
Just
forgot
yesterday,
it.
yes.
Can you name the best friend of each of your daughters?
Mari Carmen Rojas, Jimena Lopez, Adamari Lopez, Cristina Cornejo.
Good. Can you give us the name of their doctor?
Fadi Torres.
Good. Can you give us the name of their dentist?
Games Dental Land.
What are your daughter's birthdays?
Yes, May 28, 2009, August 8, 2013, February 24, 2006, June 5, 2006.
I don't even think they knew their kids' names. Like, it was so bad. Thank goodness for moms. Aren't we glad for moms? Okay, this guy's name is John Sorensen, and he is 92 years young. And in an interview recently on live TV, he was asked what he feels like when he wakes up in the morning. And he said, surprised. And I thought, that is such a good answer. Like, when you reach that age, you can say things like that. I heard a stand-up comedian years ago just kind of describe the decades of aging this way. He said, you turn 21, you become 30, you push 40, you reach 50, you make it to 60, but you hit 70. And I think most older people would probably agree with that sentiment. Don't know if you played around with the app that came out this summer that allowed you to take a selfie, and then it would show you what you're going to look like when you hit 70. Like, my family had a blast playing around with this thing, especially at my expense, because this is the picture of me at 70, and I just want to prepare you, okay, so that before I reach that age and I'm still preaching, you're okay with it, all right? Well, the very next morning I was in the office, and there were some kids milling around, and so I showed one of them that picture. I said, who do you think that looks like? And this little girl looked at it, and then she looked at her mom and said, that's the guy from Mary Poppins. Like an older version of Dick Van Dyke, I guess. I'm like trying to make the connection. And people say I look like Lance Armstrong or Daniel Tosh, but now I'm supercalifragilistic. That's awesome. One of my favorite takes on aging came from the movie City Slickers years ago. Billy Crystal described it this way to a group of 4th graders. Take a look.
Value this time in your life, kids. Because this is the time in your life when you still have your choices. And it goes by so fast. When you're a teenager, you think you can do anything, and you do. Your 20s are a blur. 30s, you raise your family, you make a little money, and you think to yourself, what happened to my 20s? 40s, you grow a little pot belly, you grow another chin. The music starts to get too loud. One of your old girlfriends from high school becomes a grandmother. 50s, you have a minor surgery. You'll call it a procedure. but it's a surgery. 60s, you'll have a major surgery. The music is still loud, but it doesn't matter because you can't hear it anyway. The 70s, you and the wife retire to Fort Lauderdale. Start eating dinner at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. You have lunch around 10, breakfast the night before. Spend most of your time wandering around malls looking for the ultimate soft yogurt and muttering, how come the kids don't call? How come the kids don't call? The 80s, you'll have a major stroke. You end up babbling to some Jamaican nurse who your wife can't stand, but who you call mama. Any questions?
Well, unfortunately, I wish I could, improve upon that or offer you a little bit better news. But I want to read today from the book of Ecclesiastes. And as Solomon got older, he offered us this perspective on aging. He said, honor your Creator while you're still young, before the years take their toll and your vigor wanes, before your vision dims and the world blurs and the winter years keep you close to the fire. In old age, your body no longer serves you so well. Muscles slacken, grip weakens, joints stiffen. Shades are pulled down on the world. Can't come and go at will. Things grind to a halt. The hum of the household fades away. You're wakened now by bird song. Hikes to the mountains are a thing of the past. Even a stroll down the road has its terrors. Your hair turns apple blossom white, adorning a fragile and impotent matchstick body. Yes, you're well on your way to eternal rest while your friends make plans for your funeral. Life, lovely while it lasts, is soon over. Life as we know it, precious and beautiful, ends. The body is put back in the same ground it came from. The spirit returns to God who first breathed it. It's hard for some of us to get our heads wrapped around this, but there is coming a day for all of us where our muscles will weaken. Our vision will dim, our hearing will fade. And so Solomon is giving some good counsel. He's simply saying, be kind to the old man you're becoming, to the old woman you're becoming. And I think if all of us can recognize this, life begins in one walker and it ends in another walker. And this is some of God's design. Like when God looked at the world and put us in families, he knew there would be a time when we're children and we couldn't care for ourselves and our parents would have to take care of us, look out for us. But then he knew the role would reverse and there would come a time when our parents wouldn't be able to take care of themselves and they would need their children to come and take care of them. This is, again, part of God's beautiful plan for us. And it really doesn't matter. Some of you are closer to this walker in age today, while others of you are closer to this walker in age. Again, wherever you find yourself on the age continuum, I'm convinced there are 3 things all of us can do to make life better for everyone we meet. First thing is simply this: love people older than you. Seems like a common sense thing to say, but friends, more and more older people are being taken advantage of at the hands of younger people. Case in point, saw this article this past week from North Carolina. It simply says 3 women arrested after police bust fight club at retirement home. And it seems kind of humorous until you hear the details. Older people struggling with dementia, suffering from Alzheimer, were literally pitted against one another against their will by the staff of this nursing facility. They would film the fights and they would even bet on them, and they wouldn't pull them apart when one person was being attacked or hurt. I don't have a category for that kind of evil. And yet, on some levels, I'm not shocked. Because sadly, we're living in a society where life is not valued on the front end or on the back end. Let me show you a better example. This is Morris and June Campbell, married for 65 years, members of our church, very faithful and active here. When Morris was a young man, he helped his dad run a grocery store. He was a standout baseball player in Warren County, even tried out for the Cleveland Indians. And then later jumped into the army, was stationed in Germany, and towards the end of his life, sadly, Parkinson's diminished the strength that once characterized his youthful years. And when he finally passed away at Thompson Hood Veterans Center in Wilmore, Kentucky, I love this, fellow veterans stood and saluted him. Some sat in wheelchairs, others leaned on canes. This man needed the assistance of a nurse, but he wasn't going to miss the opportunity to give respect where respect is due. Reminds me of what the book of Leviticus teaches when it says, stand in the presence of the elderly and show respect for the aged. My grandparents were farmers in western Kansas for their entire life, and I remember every square inch of their basement and garage. My grandmother, if she had one empty butter container, she had 500. And they were filled with buttons and batteries and bobby pins. And my grandfather kept every part from every tractor or automobile he ever worked on. And I can hear both of them saying the same thing. You never know when you might need that. And friends, the reason they didn't throw anything away is because they lived during the Great Depression when they didn't have anything to throw away. And it taught them some valuable lessons, but even greater than the Great Depression was a war. You remember not long after the Great Depression ended, a tyrannical leader to the east attacked our allies in Europe, and then a maniacal dictator to the west attacked us while we were sleeping at Pearl Harbor, and we were drawn into World War II. And I don't know if you realize this, but 80 million people lost their lives during this war. That's hard to get your head wrapped around. 80 million people died. My grandfather on the other side of my family fought in this war, was shot by the Germans in the hip and the back, and sweetest, kindest, gentlest giant you would ever meet. He'd show you where the bullets went in and out, and then he would say this to you. Some of my classmates weren't as lucky as me. I got to come home, got to marry your grandmother, and start a family. And you know what's impressive about that generation of people? Not only did they rid the world of tyranny, and we should all be grateful for that, but they came home and they built an entire nation. Like the infrastructure, the roads, the highways, the hospitals, the courthouses and power plants that we enjoy. They built houses that Chip and Joanna Gaines love to renovate by the dozen. This is the generation that harnessed atomic energy, created vaccines, and for heaven's sakes, put a person on the moon. But most importantly, I would say this about the oldest generation in our church. They've been extremely faithful in their marriages, been extremely faithful to their careers. They've been faithful to this community. And I think that's worth acknowledging. And I think it's just important at times in the body of Christ to acknowledge and to say, hey, thank you to the oldest generation in our church. So if you don't mind at all of our campuses, would you just show your appreciation for the builder generation? Sincerely, our lives are better because of the way you've lived your lives, and we want to imitate you in a lot of ways. But I acknowledge this. Every time I meet someone older than me, I have an option. I have a choice to make, and so do you. We can either respect them or resent them. You know, it's a tendency to want to just highlight the negative parts of every generation. It makes us somehow feel better about ours. But friends, as the followers of Jesus, we're not given that option. We're told to respect anyone who is older than us. And the challenge sometimes is in a society like ours that is less and less respectful of any form of life to find examples. But I want to give you a good one. This is Rosalind and Spencer. Rosalind's an 81-year-old widow. Spencer's a 22-year-old aspiring rapper. They met without seeing one another while playing Words with Friends online. They played one another 300 different times over the course of a year. Again, never saw one another. Rosalind knew this guy's good with words. He knew she was good with words. And Rosalind finally extended an invitation to come to her house in Florida to meet her. And to Spencer's credit, he drove more than 1,000 miles from his house in New York to eat lunch with this older woman. We not only need more stories like this, we need more people like this. Love people older than you. Second thing I would say is this: learn from people older than you. Last week, my son was on fall break, and so we went hunting with one of our good friends. His name's Tanner. He's in his late 20s, and anytime there's an opportunity for anyone to pour into my kids that's just a little bit older, I want to take advantage of that. And I loved watching Tanner pour into my son, and I watched my son, learn from him in a way that he maybe wouldn't have taken from me. And I thought to myself, this happened in my life. Like when I was a young man, I remember very clearly Mr. Mooseman. Every Sunday at church, this refrigerator repairman would find me, and he would hand me a pack of Juicy Fruit gum. And then he would say, "How was your week?" And he would ask me about what sport I was playing at the time or anything going on in my life, and he would really listen and show interest. And then before he'd walk away, he'd say, "You want to hear a good joke?" And he would always tell me a funny joke. And half the time I didn't know what they meant, but I would repeat them at the lunch table, Sunday lunch with my family. And one time I told this joke about Dolly Parton. And my mom, she was just holding this casserole, and I still remember the look on her face, like, what has happened to my innocent son? And my dad took me to the bathroom and washed my mouth out with soap. But I still loved Mr. Mooseman because he showed interest in me. And I got to see an older man pour into a younger man. When I started here at South, when I was 26, I didn't know anything about anything. and let me get up here and preach. And older men would invest in me, pray for me, encourage me, even pull me aside at times and say, I think you need to rethink that, challenge what I was doing. And I'm just realizing more and more that part of the reason our culture is unraveling at the seams is because we lack this multi-generational interaction that our country used to have. Can I draw us back to it? Proverbs 19 says, get all the advice and instruction you can, so you will be wise the rest of your life. And here's a great example of what that can look like. These old men gather every Saturday at a farmer's market in Salt Lake City, Utah, and they talk shop. I mean, politics, sports, religion, nothing's off limits. They make fun of each other when they need to. But one of their wives recently said, I don't know that this is the most productive way for a group of old men to spend their Saturday. So they put their heads together and they created this banner that they now hang at the farmer's market. And the banner says, old coots giving advice. It's probably bad advice, but it's free. And so anyone younger can show up and just get free advice. And to their surprise, people have been coming. Younger people seeking financial advice, relationship advice, career advice. And these old guys are realizing, man, we have something to offer. And you do. Older, wiser people, you have a ton to offer. Like there are things that you can help us avoid, mistakes you've made. And there are foundations you can help us lay to experience successes that you've experienced in life. To all the younger people, I just say it again, get all the advice and instruction you can so you will be wise the rest of your life. One of my favorite sections in the New Testament is where Paul is challenging a younger leader named Titus, and he says, hey, be sure to challenge the older men in the church to pour into the younger men in the church. And be sure to have the older women in the church pour into the younger women in the church. You're sitting in a church that has modeled that very effectively over the years. That's why I love our 210 Leaders program, where older, seasoned, savvy business leaders are investing in younger business leaders. It's why I love our school mentoring program, where at-risk children who maybe don't have good influence at home are partnered with adults from this church to invest in their lives. Here's another picture of what it can look like. This is Frank Walsh. He's 94 years young. And when his wife passed away recently, he said, I want to learn how to play the drums. Now, most people would say, I'm done. Not this guy. He got on YouTube, started watching videos. He taught himself how to play the drums, and now he's in a high school marching band. This guy's been in parades. He is playing at the halftime of football games. This is the way to end your life. This woman's Anna Storr. She's 114 years young. Her 85-year-old son bought her an iPad recently because she wanted to be on Facebook. And so they set up her profile, and if you know anything about Facebook, the profiles only go to 99 years of age, which she loves. She now tells people, I'm only 99. That's how old I am, okay? But you gotta love this. I've told you before about my mom, who's nearing her 80th birthday, works at Chick-fil-A every day. And she doesn't do it for the paycheck. She does it because every morning she wakes up and prays a simple prayer. God, put someone lonely in my path that I can hug. Put someone sad in my path that I can pray for. Put a young mom in my path who's ready to pull her hair out, and I'll encourage her. And give me little kids that I can give milkshakes to. And I've heard my mom say it over and over again, 2 Corinthians 4. Man, do not lose heart. Though outwardly we are wasting away, yet inwardly we are being renewed day by day. That's an older woman who's saying, I still feel young on the inside. She also quotes Psalm 73, which says, my health may fail, and my spirit may grow weak, but God remains my strength. He is mine forever. That's the right attitude. That's the right mindset. I had a buddy tell me that his grandpa suffers from OCD, and it's not obsessive compulsive disorder. He said it stands for old, cranky, and dangerous. And I think I've driven behind that guy on New Circle Road. Now, I want you to know this book, the Bible, it highlights the lives of 100 individual people. Did you know that? Cover to cover, 100 people's lives are laid out here, chronicled for us. Only 30%, only 30 of those 100 finish their lives well. 70 don't. I don't want that for you or for me. I don't want any of us to end up old, cranky, and dangerous. And you know, one of the ways we can avoid that is to decide today that we're going to do something intentional with something that takes most people down a dangerous path, and that is regret. Not one person here today, your life did not turn out exactly the way you thought it would. No one's ever does. Like you can look at your career, you can look at your marriage, you can look at your parenting and go, man, what if I'd done that, said that? And friends, you can waste a lot of years in the emotional wasteland of what if. Or You can decide today, I'm still alive. I've got days, weeks, months, years left. I'm going to do something with it. Here's a great example of that. This guy's name is Robert Morin. Lived a very simple life. He's a custodian at basically a library in the state of New Hampshire. Lived a simple life, packed his lunch every day, wore simple clothes, drove a simple car that was 20 years out of date. But he just lived a very frugal life. And when he died, everyone was shocked in this little town because this man had stockpiled $4.5 million, and he left it to a local elementary school because he said, I can't think of anything better than to invest what I have in the next generation. Love people older than you. Learn from people older than you. And last but definitely not least, lead people younger than you. As the family unit in our country continues to be decimated, more and more younger people are looking and craving and desiring a relationship with older people. This is why our student ministries and our children's ministry here at Southland has exploded over the last 10 years. I know, again, that it's a trend to want to put down younger generations. I'm not going to do it, ever. And I'm going to not do it for good reason. We have 20 and 30-year-olds on our staff who are absolutely crushing it, hitting it out of the park, setting the example for older people. We had one of them this past week lead the Bible study in our elders meeting, and he didn't just do a good job, he did a great job. We have middle school and high school students who intern with us every day of the week around here. They're going to take Southland's ministry to levels and heights we never dreamed possible. And none of that happens accidentally. It all happens because of what I call intentional investment. Intentional investment. By far, the best part of my week is when I have opportunity to pour into 5 young preachers around the United States. I love taking a coach in Louisville who's in his 20s and investing in his life. I've got 2 high school boys that I've poured my heart and soul into. Whatever God has downloaded into my life, it is my responsibility to pass it on to the next generation. And the same is true for you. And friends, very few people model that quite like Terry Phelps. Terry's 63 years young. She's been active in our church for a long time. She took a kindergarten life group and poured into them, and then she decided to stay with them through 1st grade and 2nd grade and so on, and she finished school with them, and then she could have just walked away, and she said, you know what? I want to go back and start over. Think about the 2 groups of girls that she's led through school, the strength, the stability they get, and then the joy she receives watching them grow up in their love of God. We asked Terry if she would share just a little bit with you about her perspective on serving the next generation. Here's what she had to say.
Hi, my name's Terry, and I've been involved in Southland Students for about 11 years. One summer there was a push for leaders because they were short on leaders during the summer. And so I thought I could do that. And so I volunteered. I got a great group of kindergartners, and I started volunteering with them, and I volunteered with them till they got to 5th grade. In 5th grade, I was like, well, do I go on or do I go back? What do I do? Do I stay? Do I go? So I did some prayer on it, and I felt like it was the right thing to go ahead and move. I joined middle school, Southland Students, and it's been a great experience. We struggled with trying to get them to pray out loud. We always had somebody who would squeeze somebody else's hand or nudge somebody, and they would all wind up in giggles. And so at winter retreat the first year, we went to prayer, and when I looked up, the entire row had cleared, and they were over in prayer in a group. And it was like just so wonderful to watch. And then later that night, we were supposed to be in lights out, which they weren't. And I walked to the door and they were praying. That was a really neat thing to watch. I feel that we can make a change. The students that are coming will be our leaders of tomorrow. So if we don't impact them today, where will we be tomorrow? The only thing that will last past my lifetime is what I do for Christ. And after having a health scare, I decided I wouldn't be real happy when I stood before Christ with what I had accomplished. So I made changes, and so this is one of the changes that I wanted to make. God has taught me through being in Southland Students, that he's not done with me yet. I've still got a lot more, and it may not be always doing this. It may be just praying for someone, doing something for someone. You just never know who you can impact.
When Silas and I were hunting last weekend, we're sitting in the darkness of the woods, and I'm watching the sun come up above the trees, and I'm listening to the squirrels and the birds wake up around me, and I'm just reminded in that moment of the verse where God says, I'm the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last, the beginning and the end. And it hit me that we serve an ageless God, that time doesn't adversely affect him the way it does us. And I was sitting there, thinking, man, in middle school science class, we all learned that everything in the universe is traveling away from a very specific point. And it's all headed towards a very specific point. And I thought to myself, wouldn't it be interesting to see if what it's all traveling away from is this hand of the Alpha who started it? And maybe it's all traveling towards this hand of the Omega who's going to end it. Remember, friends, the Bible begins in a garden in Genesis and ends in a garden in Revelation. There's a tree of life in Eden, and there's a tree of life in heaven. So hear me on this. What you do between those two trees, I can't emphasize it enough. It is so critical. You're only given one shot. And today could be a day where you decide, I'm going to make some changes. Let me leave you with one more inspirational thought. This woman's name is Miss Gerard, middle school retired teacher who could have just cruised through retirement towards her funeral. But instead, she's decided to do something good with the end of her life. Take a look at this.
In Central Texas, so many are talking about retired teacher Michelle Gerard and what she just did. That's her smiling next to a former student, Chris Barrington, who just turned 30 years old.
He deserves a good life. He's had a hard life.
Just 2 months ago, police found Chris, who has special needs, wandering the streets of Gatesville. When officers asked, he couldn't remember the name of anyone who could help, except his junior high teacher, Miss Gerard, who hadn't seen him in years.
So I said, what if it happens if I don't take you? Would he get in a group home? And they said, no, he'd go into an institution. And I was like, not on my watch, he's not.
So she took him in and realized in his 30 years, there was so much he missed.
He's never had a birthday present, a birthday party. He's never had Christmas, Thanksgiving, nothing.
So Michelle contacted a local fishing captain, Jimmy Bennett, who helps people with special needs. They organized this birthday party. A Spider-Man cake, even a fishing trip, all for Chris. Chris was so excited to get on that boat and cruise around Lake Waco.
As we were driving across the lake, he just said, I love you, I love you, I love you. He was having such a great time.
Right now, Michelle is applying to become Chris's guardian. In the meantime, he's meeting new friends, having new experiences, and hopefully getting a new family.
Yeah, you can clap for Miss Gerard. The point this weekend is very simple. All of us have older people we can love. All of us have older people we can learn from, and all of us have younger people we can lead. From one walker to another walker. May you live your life well, and may you make intentional investments, and here's why. Solomon again said, honor your Creator while you're still young, and in the presence of an ageless God, we're all young. Before the years take their toll and your vigor wanes, before your vision dims and the world blurs and the winter years keep you close to the fire. In old age, your body no longer serves you so well. Muscles slacken, grip weakens, joints stiffen. Shades are pulled down on the world. Can't come and go at will. Things grind to a halt. The hum of the household fades away. You're wakened now by bird song. Hikes to the mountains are a thing of the past. Even a stroll down the road has its terrors. Your hair turns apple blossom white, adorning a fragile and impotent matchstick body. Yes, you're well on your way to eternal rest, while your friends make plans for your funeral. Life, lovely while it lasts, is soon over. Life as we know it, precious and beautiful, ends. The body is put back in the same ground it came from. The spirit returns to God who first breathed it. Let me pray first. Father, thank you for your design of the family and for your design of the church where many generations can live in unity with one another. Father, I pray that this church would be a beacon of light and example of how that works and how that looks. Right now, I pray you bring to everyone's mind at least one older person that they can thank this week, either through a written letter, a text, a phone conversation, or maybe even over a meal. God, I also pray that you bring to mind at least one younger person that each of us can invest our lives in, that we can download what you've given us, the wisdom, the love, the experience, so that future generations, God, have a leg up, a start that we maybe weren't given in life. We love you. We thank you for Jesus, our brother, who brings us all together under one umbrella of love. God, we're grateful for that love. In Christ's name we pray these things. Amen.